What can happen if I don't quit drugs? So this depends on the drug of choice, and I need to break it down into various categories. So I'm going to start off with cannabis or marijuana. In long-term use, people slow down. They lose their ability to articulate. They tend to be demotivated and lack general desire in life. And this is a sad side effect. I know this because I've personally used back when I was a teenager. And so this is a very unfortunate thing. The fortunate thing with cannabis use, though, is there's no real major problem on the cardiovascular system. It does not cause any premature deaths or anything to that severity, unlike the other classes of drugs. But for the most part, marijuana will slow people down. They are less intelligent than they can be. They're less sharp, and obviously things like reflexes are impaired, and they're just shrouded. They're not the full person. When it comes to alcohol, if a person doesn't quit drinking alcohol and they are consuming more than the recommended daily amount, then it's possible they can cause liver damage, also known as hepatitis. Not infectious hepatitis, but alcohol-induced hepatitis. And this can eventually, with repeated bouts of alcohol-induced hepatitis, can cause cirrhosis, which is long-term liver damage, and liver failure can also cause problems. So this liver failure can be evidenced by unresolved bleeding episodes. They can have bleeding from esophageal varices, which can be potentially life-threatening, which is a dilated blood vessel in the esophagus, and they would start vomiting blood. Pretty serious stuff. They can have hepatic encephalopathy, which is changes in the brain because of long-term alcohol use. And this can affect their speech. They cannot express themselves, articulate well. There can be speech articulation issue itself, where they can have slurred speech and sound like they're drunk all the time. And there could be tremors and other long-term problems, including seizure. Alcohol abuse, if not treated over a long period of time, can cause serious long-term side effects and premature death as well. Now, getting onto the heavier drugs like cocaine, crack, and most opioids, as well as crystal meth. These are all very strong, highly potent, rapid-acting drugs that a person goes into withdrawal quite quickly when they stop taking it. So this accelerates the depth of their addiction spiral and speeds it up. So the consequences on their lifestyle may not be apparent at first, and most people cannot control their use of these highly addictive substances, and they start spiraling at a more rapid rate than a person would, say, on chronic alcohol use or chronic cannabis use. Long-term side effects of all these highly addictive substances, as I just said, cocaine, crack, opioids, and crystal meth, are multiple and can affect multiple organ systems. With crystal meth, for example, it's very common that people start losing their teeth. They get meth mouth, which is lack of blood flow to the teeth, the small little arteries that serve each tooth, and the teeth start rotting, they decay, and eventually they'll fall out. It looks pretty nasty. As I said before, it is an addiction spiral that happens, and even though there's not one particular thing that I can say is common to all of them, the one thing that does override all of this is a general deterioration. The person is deteriorating, they lose interest in all the things going on in their life that they once enjoyed. There's no more balance with recreation and fun and entertainment. They become isolated and basically want to be alone with their drug of choice. Relationships fail. Friendships fail. They will have problems eventually, possibly with work. And so there's a lot of long-term complications that go on. Now, these are not, I'm not giving the medical complications in this case because they're not so obvious with these drugs. Even though they're very strong, they're not so obvious the effects they can have. It's just a general deterioration that goes on with this person until they hit eventually rock bottom, whether it's being in jail, an institution, or if they unintentionally overdose or die. Weight loss is another one with all those drugs as well. Finally, with other drugs that are not, if a person doesn't quit, we should include ecstasy or MDMA. And in this situation, the studies aren't out yet. This appears to not have any long-term side effects that are severe. That's not to say, though, that there is not mental slowing, difficulties with articulation, speech, long-term cognitive decline. We don't know yet because the drugs haven't been out long enough to know this. But my guess, just like any other drug, there will be cognitive decline, which is endemic to all drug abuse because they are messing with neurotransmitters. And just to keep in mind that a person is not their full themselves. They do not hit their full potential when they're using any of these regular drugs on a regular basis. I'm not saying that people, if they use intermittently, that they have a better chance, but that would be a harm reduction argument. But if they were to use sparingly over their lifetime, then perhaps they would not have any long-term complications. But the problem is most drugs are addictive, and most people cannot use sparingly. They escalate their use. So if you have any questions or concerns, I would love to hear it, but that's my answer in a nutshell as far as what happens if you don't stop taking drugs.